Welcome to the Sunday Forum, and let us pray. O God of love, guide us as we come together this morning to learn new ideas that deepen our faith. We pray you would inspire within us the spirit of curiosity and the desire to grow, so that we may continue to walk in your ways. All this we ask through your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Good morning once again, and welcome to the Sunday Forum. We're very glad to welcome Paul Conry this morning from the San Diego Episcopal Diocese Gun Safety Working Group. He's the chair of that working group, and he will be speaking to us this morning about some of the important work that they're doing, how it started, some of the engagement that they're doing with local churches and in the communities, and then also what some opportunities are for the group and for our cathedral going forward. I do want to say that on the back table, there's a collection of literature on gun safety. Feel free to help yourself to brochures, pins, and there's also a sign-up sheet if you didn't get a chance to sign in for communications and announcements. So thank you very much. Please welcome Paul Conry.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Paul Conry, and I'm the chair of the Diocese Gun Safety Working Group. I'm also a member of St. Bart's, and my wife Ivy is my co-pilot, so to speak, in our interest in involvement in gun safety. Let me give you a little bit about information about my background, and then also a little bit of information just about our Diocesan Gun Safety Working Group. My background and interest in gun safety, I think started, actually in my professional career. I previously worked as a wildlife biologist, and I was in charge of, hunting and, shooting sports kind of activities in 2 different states. One was on Guam, where I regulated the hunting program there, and also in Hawaii, where I was, chief of the wildlife division there, Forestry and Wildlife Division, wildlife program, and also the administrator for the Division of Forestry and Wildlife. And in those roles, one of the things that was my responsibility was to, regulate the hunting programs. And on Guam, our regulation of the hunting program was, on a small island that is, adjacent to quite a number of military bases, and they actually allowed hunting on those bases, but it was pretty tightly regulated and restricted. And in those instances, we actually regulated, what firearm could you safely use, and then there were places that you can only use bow and arrow, and there were places that you can only use shotgun, and very few places that you could use rifle or pistols and things like that. And so, part of that was, an element of what is safe for the community, what is safe for the, the actual areas that you're hunting in. And similarly in Hawaii too, where it's a much bigger place, there's a lot more open area and more hunting. But again, it was part of our responsibility to regulate that for safety for the public, and then also for the hunters. And so I had that involvement with knowledge of firearms and just an interest in, what's responsible use and what is, things that we can and should do to keep our community safe. So I'm retired from that now, but I'm still working with gun safety. And I think one of the things that has spurred me to be involved in this is just, some general concern about, how many firearms there are just in general in our society, and how many deaths and things like that attributed to firearms. And it kind of drove me to, eventually say, enough is enough. There should be something that I can do. I think one of our concerns is going to church. I know members of my family, they're sitting there, they're concerned that, you can go to church now and there can be somebody that's carrying a firearm sitting right next to you. And does that increase your chances of accident or, an incident that can occur, in the church? And so, that's where we've gotten involved and are interested in this issue. Our gun safety working group, it's been in the diocese for many years, and it goes a little bit dormant and then it comes back. When we raised our hand and said, we're interested in doing something about this, both within our church community and within our state and within our nation. We raised our hand and volunteered, and they immediately appointed me as the chair. So I'm actually grateful for that, because I think I can bring some experience and background that can help move us forward. But our gun safety working group, we actually started just a little over a year ago in June of 2023. And we've been kind of getting organized and active, and we've got 21 parishes that are members, that have membership on the committee, and one of the schools, and we've got over 43, or we have 43 in members that we're providing information to and that can participate in our meetings and such. So I would certainly encourage any of you, if you're interested in getting involved in this issue, to please join. And we've got a sign-up sheet on the table back there. So, and our membership goes all the way from over in the desert, Barago Springs and St. Margaret's there, to here in San Diego. So it's pretty widespread across the county. And we have a monthly meeting on this third Tuesday of the month on Zoom from 11 to 12, and all are invited. So again, if you're interested in getting involved, I encourage you to join us. Number one, I'm going to try to do two things this morning. One is introduce you to some of the things that we're doing and some of the focus of our group, and also within that, I also come up and bring ideas that you as individuals in a congregation can do to work on the gun violence problems here in our society. But then also there's one that is a particular initiative of our working group, and that is just elevating the issue of should churches be gun-free. And so then the kind of second half of my presentation, I'll kind of talk about what are some of the reasons for that and what that would actually look like. Again, the Gun Safety Working Group, we are organized under the Diocese Service and Advocacy Ministries, and our mission is to seek and support solutions that promote safety for all people and combat violence in our communities as we heed Jesus' call to serve and protect the least of these, and embrace his call to nonviolence as outlined in Matthew 5:38 and 39. So there's kind of four different major focuses that we're working on in the working group. And the first one, and this is probably the most important, is to assist our congregations and individual parishes in making their homes, places of worship, and communities safe from gun violence. And with that, one of the main things we want to do is engage our youth in our initiatives. So what are some of the activities that we actually do for that? One of the things that you can do is set up a gun safety table at parishes and events like these. And so, voila, there's a gun safety information table right back there. And with that, we try to provide information that's useful for individuals, such as what do you need to do for keeping your home safe if you do have firearms. What are some of the regulations for that? And we've actually got, one of the key things if you do have a firearm is keep it secured. And we've got gun locks that are available that if you have one, you need a gun lock, please take it and use it. We also participate in our gun safety forums, just like this. We assist in developing gun safety plans for congregations, and then also, weighing in on policy issues and decisions related to guns. If there is a congregation that, would like to upgrade their gun safety plan, I know at the diocese, Jeff Green is actually the lead for that, and he's got a lot of useful materials. But I think what we could do is actually get some congregations to, take the next step and elevate that, and then share that among the other congregations. So, here's a plan that you can implement that we hope will be effective and make your parish a little bit more safe. Then we also conduct outreach to young people. So I've got a few slides that will show you some of those activities in action, and you're going to see me and my beautiful wife in most of these, but it's mostly those that we take and share with our grandkids. So, but here, we just set up information tables like this is my home parish at St. Bart's, and this was, one that was set up in conjunction with the Wear Orange Sunday. We try to develop relationships with the youth in our communities. And one of the cases that we have had is we're involved with San Diegans for Gun Violence Prevention, and they have a lot of activities that go on, and so we participate in those. And there's a group of young people that are involved. Students Demand Action. That's kind of an arm of Moms Demand Action, and just outreach to them and try to get information to them and assist. We also have had also discussions and meetings with our youth council here in the diocese. One of the other main working group focuses to engage with other community and national gun violence prevention groups, such as the Episcopal Peace Fellowship, Bishops United Against Gun Violence, and here locally, the San Diegans for Gun Violence Prevention and Moms Demand Action. And that is just to keep in touch with what's going on, across, here locally and across the nation. We also participate in gun buyback events that are sponsored by San Diego Police, the San Diego Sheriff's Department, and we're there to support them, hand out information, and just see if we can't get some more information into the public's hand that are participating in those. And those are really good events. That's where they actually buy back firearms that are no longer needed or in households. And if you turn it in, you get $100 for just a regular one, or $200 for like an assault weapon. And I personally turned in one of my old hunting shotguns that I didn't need, and I got $100, and with that I purchased a gun box that you see back there on the table. Here's a photo of the Wear Orange Sunday participation in St. David's on the left, and also Good Samaritan on the right. And I know that Paul organized Wear Sunday Orange here at St. Paul's, and I really appreciate that effort, and it looked like it was a successful event. Here's also a picture of one of those community gun buyback events. This was at Jacobs Center in San Diego, and this was the San Diego Police Department. And they come in numbers to support it. You can see in the photo on the left, that's the number of policemen that they had participate. And it's set up in a parking lot. It could be set up in a church parking lot. We've attended one that was in Lemon Grove that was set up in a Methodist church. And I think they need a welcome host. And then also I'm not sure if they have specific areas they want to actively try and get gun buyback going on. But, we'll work with the law enforcement to see if that's an opportunity that we can get more involved in, and potentially there may be some of our parishes that would even be interested in sponsoring. But at this particular event, those were some of the photo in the middle. That's some of the nonprofits or the partners that were involved in passing on information. And then also you can kind of see the guns on the right that were turned in that day. And then there were 187 firearms that were turned in on that one day. And the rifles and such on the left, and that box has got the pistols that were turned in. So again, I think that's one of the effective things that can be done to help reduce just the prevalence of guns in our communities, and then also reduce gun violence. And here's a picture of our participation in one of the vigils, and this is the annual Sandy Hook National Vigil for Victims of Gun Violence. And there we even had a number of Episcopals that came with us for that vigil. Again, I would encourage you to please try and attend one of these, because you hear from survivors, you hear what the shootings, how it's affected their lives, and just the loss, and it helps to, I think, bring awareness throughout the community and also help them in their path forward. Another thing that we do is help effect, or one of our focuses to help effect common sense changes in local, state, and national gun safety and gun violence prevention laws and regulations, just to try and reduce the level of gun violence. And what we do, we support local gun violence groups like San Diego's for Gun Violence Prevention in their initiatives. If they organize a gun buyback, we'll show up and help man the information tables. If they're at the county council meetings for regulations that are being considered locally, we'll show up and be there in support or even offer a testimony. But we also then have connections that we can pass around information on what is coming before different bodies locally and advocate for passage of gun safety and gun violence prevention measures. And one of the ones that I participated in was when they were taking testimony on passing the county gun violence reduction plan, and was there in support, and the county board of supervisors did approve that plan, and so it has now gone into effect in 2024 and 2025. And through that plan, they are providing funding for things like gun safety events in local communities, gun buyback programs, and things like that to our law enforcement agents. So you can make a difference. And again, here's the photo on the left is that actual one of the meetings that we went to. This was county supervisor, where they put out a resolution recognizing Wear Orange Week and the victims of gun violence. And the picture on the right then shows some of the celebrities that can show up at these gun buyback events. That's our mayor there that Ivy and I had a chance to talk to and lobby for continued support for gun violence reduction activities in the city. So one of the questions is, why do this work? Well, for me, it's kind of the right thing to do, but I think for our church, it's the right thing to do, and it's also a matter of faith to try and reduce the horrific levels of gun violence in our society. Gun violence kills more than 100 persons per day. Just last year, 43,184 people were killed by gun violence. And that included over 24,000 suicides. So that's the largest tool of gun violence, is just suicides. And that's why on the table there's a lot of information about safe storage and even tools to keep your firearms safe so that they can be used for suicide. And also another statistic with that, there were 655 mass shootings in our country last year. And that's multiple times more than any other country in the world that is suffering with mass shootings. And I think that's directly related to just the amount of guns that are in our society. The other thing that drives me personally, and also is an important reason to engage in this, is that gun violence is now the #1 killer of children. in teens in the U.S. and over 1,700 children deaths in 2023. It's gotten so bad that gun violence is now designated a public health crisis in America. And the reason to do this work is because taking actions to prevent and reduce gun violence saves lives. There's a number of things that individuals and congregations can do to get engaged in this work. Number one, you can find and join members of your community working on gun safety and gun violence prevention. I would encourage you to join our Diocese Gun Safety Working Group. As a congregation, you can preach about gun violence and educate your congregation. And I applaud you for reaching out and inviting me to come and speak to you today. We must pray for an end to gun violence. And you can offer your space to hold meetings and vigils or gun safety events. Some other things that you can do, you can participate our local and national advocacy actions. You can participate by preaching with your feet, so you can come and join us if there's a vigil. A few years ago, we participated in the march down through downtown San Diego to just call for an end to gun violence. We were out on the street with lots of people during that march. You can support common sense changes in local and national laws to reduce gun violence. And then another thing you can do is consider declaring your church a gun-free zone. And so that's an initiative that our Gun Safety Working Group is taken up to kind of champion. And what we want to do is, one, encourage churches to have this conversation. In 2012, the Episcopal Church at their, I think it was the 77th annual convention, they passed a resolution that requested every congregation, parish and congregation, to consider, or actually to declare their churches, their properties as gun-free zones. And it, well, as far as I can tell, it was in 2012, and it hasn't been done formally within the diocese. I know that our bishop, in her recent statement on gun violence, requested that, or encouraged each congregation to consider designating their congregation gun-free. And I think that's one of the things that we in the Gun Safety Working Group are developing a resolution for the next diocese convention, just repeating that request, just from the diocese annual meeting of the diocese itself. Why would you want to consider declaring your church a gun-free zone? And then kind of give you what has been done, what could potentially be a resolution you could bring forward, and then get into a little bit of discussion about that. The main things that I think come to my mind in doing so is to just make an affirmative statement that we as Christians are followers of Christ's teaching of love, and our holy spaces are welcoming sanctuaries of peace and nonviolence. In having that position, would reflect that. A church might also want to declare itself a gun-free zone to help church members and visitors feel welcome and safe where there is concern for safety around firearms. And I know this is a thing that I worry about, bringing my kids, my grandkids, anywhere. Is it safe to take them to Target? Is it safe to, take them places where there's potentially people that are carrying firearms? And then I think another aspect is that if there aren't firearms present, then you're definitely reducing the risk of firearm injuries and just deaths from unintentional accidents, or if there's violent acts of anger that are just emotional responses, or avoiding escalatory conflict with firearms. Is this consistent with church policy? And yes, the Episcopal Church has passed many resolutions on encouraging wise gun use policies in the U.S. And starting back in 2000, one of the resolutions was to just reduce guns and gun violence in our communities, asking our members to take action to reduce guns and gun violence in our communities. And then in 2012, a resolution passed requesting every parish and every diocese place of work to declare their establishments as gun-free zones. And then also, as mentioned, our bishop in her statement on gun violence encouraged each congregation to consider declaring itself a weapon-free zone. So is this unique to San Diego? No, there are many gun-free Episcopal churches across the country. In Hawaii, they declared their diocese gun-free in 2023. Connecticut, the diocese gun-free in 2016. In the Diocese of Georgia, 2014. The Diocese of Texas, 2016. And the Diocese of North Carolina, their diocese offices in 2023. And here in San Diego, St. Barnabas in Borrego Springs has declared their church gun-free. But then there's other Episcopal churches across the country, and this was just information pulled off of the internet in a few minutes. This is not unique to our Episcopal faith. The Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth designated their entire diocese gun-free. The Mormon Church is gun-free. And then there's also examples of synagogues that are gun-free. And our interfaith brethren, the Presbyterians as well. And it's also not unique to churches. There are many businesses, San Diego Convention Center, the amusement parks, Petco Park, Snapdragon Stadium, the Radio Shack, hospitals, Costco and Target. And then many of the businesses they're nationwide, they have regulations that just do not allow open carry of firearms. And I think a lot of that is to promote a sense of safety and security in their businesses to provide that for their customers. So what would a resolution say? Basically, it can be pretty simple. It would take an act of the vestry or whatever is your actual ruling of your administrative, the head of your congregation. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is for St. Paul's, but if it's not the vestry, the chapter. And it would basically, that they would declare that the Episcopal Church of St. Paul's Cathedral is a gun-free zone, and that carrying of firearms is prohibited on the parish grounds if you have a school and all property owned and managed by St. Paul's. And here's an important part, except, and here you can provide exceptions. And in this case, it would be duly authorized civil authorities, law enforcement officers, and importantly, the church authorized security or other personnel in the exercise of official duties. The other element that I've seen in such resolutions is that they need to produce signs. So it would be the administrative office be instructed to obtain or produce placard and public notices to be posted, instructing the public. And then the other thing is that, resolve that the leadership of the congregation would then be responsible, take the responsibility for posting signs. And so that's an example of what a resolution could say, and we have a copy of a draft. And again, quickly, what does it do? It prohibits firearms unless authorized. It allows law enforcement and other civil authorities to carry firearms when on duty. And so if the mayor decides he's going to come and speak, and his bodyguards, of course, would be authorized to be there for his safety. But it allows the churches to hire security or authorize other personnel to carry firearms if deemed necessary. It applies to all persons. It would be congregations, tenants, visitors coming onto the campus, and it posts signs. at entrances to the main buildings. I mean, some of the possible signs, you could just say, no guns in God's house. Again, here is one that is an example, kind of a generic one. One of the important things is their flexibility. But it allows the church to determine its own policies and procedures. You can hire security or authorize other personnel to carry firearms, and so that could be even members of your congregation if they were trained, if they're off-duty police or whatever, or members, they could be authorized to do it. So it's the flexibility of allowing your congregation to decide what works for them. And it would also give you the ability then to allow special events. So say you had a gun-free zone, but then you wanted to hold a gun buyback in a parking lot, you could authorize that. There are other things that can be done in addition to just passing a resolution like that. And these are important because I think that would come with a combination of what other things to do. And one of those is to incorporate, a gun-free zone policy into your overall operational safety plan for the church, and then take appropriate measures in that to enhance the way that works. And one of those is to conduct training for your staff, and then also enhance physical security on campus. And currently there's a grant from the state, the California State Nonprofit Security Grant Program, where up to $250,000 is available to nonprofits and churches fall within that, with no cost share. It's for things like planning, equipment, training, renovations, contract security, and management, and support services. And this was actually out in the Diocese news recently, and Jeff Green is a good contact for that. What is it that I'm asking you to do is to individually reflect on what environment you desire for worshiping. What environment you want to see here in your congregation, in your parish, for your kids that go to school here, or for gathering here with your friends. What is it that makes you feel safe, secure, and welcoming, and welcome? I would also really urge you to discuss this with your fellow parishioners, and just give some consideration into some different approaches that might work, that may be more appropriate for your congregation. And that could be as simple as declaring your space a sanctuary for peace and nonviolence, or it could even be having a policy and not putting up signs. But then I would also encourage you to have this conversation, and have your vestry do thoughtful prayer and discernment, and review and determine its own policies and procedures, if this is right for your congregation. Call for action here is that Jesus calls us to love our neighbor, love our enemy, to resist violence and aggression. And I think his teaching and his example, is told to us in Luke 22:49 through 51. Now that was the time of his arrest. His disciples pulled out their sword and started to fight back against the temple guards. And Jesus told his disciples to turn away from that violence, to lay down their swords. And he urged his followers to resist the cycle of aggression and embrace the path of love and reconciliation. I think that's true for us as well. So I think we ask, as members of our gun safety working group, you to consider seriously a policy that reflects the teachings of Jesus and the values of nonviolence. The other thing, I also wanted to just invite you to visit our gun safety table back there, gun safety information table. We've got actual tools and gun locks if you need one, or if you know somebody that could use one, need one. There's pamphlets from our local groups that are active. There's buttons, take a button, take a ribbon, I wear mine every Sunday. And also would encourage you and welcome you to sign up for our gun safety working group. So we can go back to, an open discussion.
Hey, Paul?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say the cathedral, a part of buildings and grounds, so we have already applied for that $250,000. So we're waiting to hear from them. But I suggest that maybe some of the smaller churches and stuff, they might not get $250,000, but maybe if they talk to other churches that have applied for this grant, maybe that might help them get started, because maybe they don't know how to answer the grant questions. But it's free money and it provides a lot of security. I mean, we're a big campus, it's different, but we're also applying for cameras and also secure doors that are opening up with the fobs and stuff for this side of the campus. So my suggestion would to put that out there too, is to say maybe other churches can ask other parishes, hey, how do you apply for this?
No, that's great advice, Jen. And maybe one of the things too is if you're familiar with there are other smaller churches that have done it. So, if we even just have contacts that we can help distribute.
But I think people would just get afraid of all the questions.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean,
it's a little daunting.
I've filled out many of those grant applications in my career, and it's, oh my goodness, how do you answer this question? So
that's my only suggestion.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this very informative talk. I'm assuming that you're thinking that nothing's happening significantly at the federal level. That this has to start at the ground level and rise up. And I'm wondering if you're thinking there's any movement or change as a result of that. And what are the barriers? What's the resistance? We need to turn to the young people because maybe some of the right evangelical churches are opposed to this, or what are your thoughts on?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. Is that this is and can be a political issue, and that's unfortunate. I think what I personally believe is that having a gun safety, a no gun zone, is actually a safe way for our congregation to go forward. So I think just working at the grassroots level, there's two reasons to do that. One, I think it enhances the safety for your congregation, which is one of the things that we really want to do. The other thing, it just makes a statement, and it is an affirmative statement that we as a congregation, we as a church, both here locally and nationally, we believe that guns and more guns are not the answer to gun violence in our society, and so it does make a move. I personally kind of got attracted to this particular question on gun-free zones for churches because the legal issues, the Bruin case in the Supreme Court, which basically authorized individuals to carry firearms, in public places, was passed in 2022, I think, or it was a few years ago. And it basically kind of opened up across the nation just all kinds of freedom to carry guns everywhere. And California has a history of having very strict gun laws where possession or carrying in public places, it was just prohibited. So the California legislature went back last year and they passed a new law that identified churches as one of these sensitive places that you could not carry firearms just as part of state law. And that was appealed and overturned by the federal judges based on that earlier Bruin conflict. So that kind of alerted me to, this is an issue. It can be an issue here in California where we don't have open carry, but in many other states that do allow open carry. And so I think one is that community that says, no, we don't think that's a safe way to go. We don't think that's, what is good for our community, our society here. That does make an affirmative statement of that. And that's why we're interested in having our congregations consider that. But then I think that can also pass up the chain at the national level. But I think it will be, go the way of our politics nationally on whether or not it is. I mean, and there's, many people that think, this is one of the difficult parts with this issue is that, two advocates for it. One, they both have the same outcome, more safety for our communities. One is, saying, less guns, and the other is saying more guns. And so there's got to be some way we can bridge this. So,
Individual rights versus community.
Yeah. So, I mean, you asked, do I see, a change nationally in this? I think you all know, what are the national, things to do, but there's national entities that are working on trying to inform and educate and actually inspire changes nationally. And I'm an optimist, I remain hopeful.
Have you seen a major upgrade in Episcopal churches across the country, threatening gun laws where they have open carry laws on the books still? I know Michigan and a few other middle American states have these open gun laws, and I don't hear the church, either Episcopal or other major churches, stepping up on the politicians to get new laws into effect.
Well, I think if we go back to that actual list of Episcopal churches that have taken action in declaring their sites, I mean, those are basically some of those statements that they make, and oftentimes, when they do that, they're also imploring their state legislatures or, their governors that, here is what our feeling and our position are. And so, I think the example, in Hawaii, I know that they did it in response to this decision to make, firearms more accessible everywhere. They passed a resolution, and that was just last year in 2023. The Diocese of North Carolina had similar concerns, and they took action in 2023. And so I think there is some recognition and effort to make that statement there. But I think many of these, even earlier, if you look at their history, sometimes it was prompted by just that concern that, guns were being authorized to be carried everywhere.
Okay, because you have young people who have the ghost guns. And every time you hear about the buyback by the police departments, and I know a lot of friends that I have that are in law enforcement said their biggest problem is getting the young people to turn in their ghost guns. And I don't know, California has really stepped up on this in the local, because I talked to the new chief of police last month, and said the biggest problem is getting them to turn them in. And I think if parents educate their children about gun safety, this would be a big upgrade in not only California but across the country.
Yeah, I agree, and I know the Episcopal Church, I didn't have the list of resolutions that have been passed, but they did pass a resolution to ban those ghost guns. It's one of the actions that the church at the national level has taken.
I appreciate you. I want to thank you for having this conversation, because I lost a brother to suicide in 1981, I think, and he had mental health issues, and I just want to thank you for having this conversation. That's all I have. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, my understanding is, that mental health issues, though, is a minority of the people who commit gun violence. People are more bad than mad like that. And I'm certainly happy to have more attention paid to mental health, but what are your perspectives on that?
I think I would agree. I think an argument that it's only mental health, I think is not correct. I think if you look at the mental health, there certainly are cases where they do cause violence, but I think if you look, oftentimes they're more the recipient of violence than the perpetrator. But mental health, people can have that and they can cause violence. Part of the stats that I've seen are that, what's driving is just the amount of firearms that are in our society is kind of tracking with what the gun violence is. And one of the things with mental health is that, you can have a situation and, things can be fine until they're not fine, or with anyone that has a firearm. They may be, yeah, sure, I can get a firearm, and, not have mental health problems. You develop mental health problems, and it's a problem. So there isn't a problem until it actually occurs. And I think there's 2 cases of firearm shootings in Episcopal churches that I've found in the searches that we've done. One was in Alabama where there was a recent member of the congregation that was an occasional attendee that showed up, that was coming and came to a potluck that they had after service. And he was there sitting alone, and some of the other parishioners who had seen him attending, they came and they offered for him to come and join them at their table. And, they pulled out a firearm and started shooting them and kind of shot them dead. But that particular person, that could be, something snapped, you say, these gun bonkers. But that person was a licensed federal firearms dealer who had gone through all of the licensing, the background checks, the security checks required for that, and it still happened. So, I think, mental health, those are some of the things that, you try to prevent. And there's ways that the congregation can prevent that. And I think St. Paul's is a good example where you've got, your volunteers that kind of can sit there and be out there on the periphery with eyes open and alert to what's going on.
I remember working in an emergency room, and most of the medical patients, their belongings would have to be separated from them. So if there were guns or knives. But the psychiatric patients, they didn't do that with. And so I tried to suggest that,
Wow.
And the nurses said to me, "Oh, we're tough, we can handle that."
Oh.
And then the director of the emergency room said to me, "And I suppose you want world peace too." So
That would be nice.
barriers are just.
Yeah, we'll agree.
I should probably know this, but what happens to the guns that are bought back?
And the guns that are brought back under this program, they are destroyed. That's what they're doing. And so I think there's actually been, some good vigilance on the part of our county supervisors to make sure that actually happens. But again, I think the gun buyback, can be a good example. So, if you have a gun and you want to turn it in, do so and join me and buy another 40 gun locks that we can distribute to help make others' homes safe.
What are the most common objections and considerations that people have against the proposal of designating parish grounds as a gun-free zone? And how do you respond to those objections and considerations?
I think the most, or the biggest concern is safety. And I think there are many many people in our community and our congregations that are concerned that if you put up a sign that says, gun-free zone, no guns allowed, guns prohibited, that would actually make your congregation, your church, your building an actual target for a mass shooting or gun violence. That it would be sought out and become a target. And there's evidence out there that's inconclusive. We know that happens. That there are statements of I looked for a place that said no guns and went and attacked it. But there's also evidence that there's a couple of studies that are out, and I can put them back on the table. One that just looked at the prevalence of actual shooting and accident happening either in a place that was designated as gun-free versus a place that was open to free or open to firearms. And the places that were open to firearms were more likely to have mass shooter, active shooter incident than places that were designated as gun-free. So that's across the board, but I mean that would take into consideration, if you're a place that's allows gun, it could be a bar where everybody gets a little bit tipsy and pulls out their firearm and such. But I think that's cases like that. But again, there are cases where people could decide it's they gun-free, and so I'm not going to be opposed. But so that's where that's the debate that needs to happen.
Can you fill us in on California's laws relative to the removal of weapons from the homes of people who are suffering severe dementia or have acted out?
Yes, and I generally know those. I'm sorry, I think there may in fact be a pamphlet back there that lists those are red flag laws for California, and there is indeed a pamphlet back there. But California is one of the states that really has some really good, strong, active red flag laws that are out there. And so, you as a family member, or if you are there and just a person whose neighbor is threatening or something like that, I think you're holding up one of the pamphlets back there. Yeah, there's a way that you can go and contact the police and actually have the person, if it's your loved one that you're concerned about, just have them identified as a risk for violence, gun violence, and then the police can actually go in and remove the weapons. And it can be removed for a temporary period until they get treatment and are recovered and it's certified as that. But California indeed is one of the communities that has that. And so there's just general violence, and there's also domestic violence, which is a big problem. And so that's one of the populations that they're trying to help protect with those red flag laws. But California indeed has those.
I had two comments. One was I was concerned when I was younger. They used to have law enforcement funerals at St. Paul's, and the place would just be filled with hundreds of law enforcement people. And of course, they all have their firearms with them. But I see the flexibility in your guidelines would not prevent that. And so that was one question. The other was I've had some cousins who grew up hunting and such things, and as they grew older, they mostly stopped hunting, but they retained their guns and thought they were safely stored. But at least one of them had had a home robbery, and those were taken. And I have wondered if there wasn't a way to store guns outside of the home in some sort of public storage that would be under lock and key and secure, where people who had multiple guns or whatever would not have to be having them in the home if such sort of things were happening. Yeah,
I know that is a favorite suggestion of some of the folks is like, everyone, if you want to have a gun, you have a communal storage place for it. If you want to go hunting, store it at the lodge or whatever. And I don't know if any programs like that actually exist. So it could be a new, a business opportunity, so to speak. So, but I think there's opportunities that now gun safes and things like that are pretty readily available. So, one way to do that would be even provide that type of things that could be cheaply purchased or even handed out. I know San Diego Police Department actually hands out, I think for pistols, like a safe storage gun box. They can hand those out free. And under some of these grants, that could indeed be some of the things that you could provide.
Well, I'd like to make a comment. When this first came up, and the idea of this forum, I'll admit that my first reaction was, well, this is another kind of aspirational statement, and you're preaching, literally preaching to the converted. But the more that I thought about it, the more sense it makes. For one thing, there's a long tradition that the church is a sanctuary. It goes back to the Middle Ages. And further, in light of the fact that the federal government, through the courts, is actually impeding progress, and it's often the church that is the first segment of society that actually creates these advances in human safety and freedom. But I'm reminded of how deeply embedded this we call it gun culture, our very language, which we have this myth of the rugged individual, the cowboy and his gun, and the language that we use. I told you before the forum that I'd run across the phrase gun sanctuary, and it's not a sanctuary for human beings, it's a sanctuary for guns. It means a place where the local government has created an ordinance or provisions that impede the enforcement of gun control laws. And people talk about a gun safe. It's to keep your gun safe. They don't say it's to keep the people safe. It's so deeply embedded in our culture. That's what this movement is up against.
Yeah, agreed. And it's one I think there's support both at the church level nationally and in communities that more guns are not the answer to greater security in our future. I think that's something that I firmly believe in. What I want to do is urge you to have this conversation, to continue this conversation. And I know we'll probably be seeing a resolution at our Diocese convention in November that is one asking for the diocese in general to once again go and request that each of our congregations consider whether or not they should designate their parishes as gun-free. Well, I think I've gone over time. I want to thank you all for coming and listening to me preach, so to say. This is my topic that I like to get excited about, and hopefully encourage you to think about and take action. And Sterling, is there?
Well, thank you very much. I don't have anything else to add. I want to thank you for joining us this Sunday and providing that really wonderful information. And thank you all for attending as well. Just a reminder, on the back table there is some of that literature and gun locks. Just by way of announcement, we do not have a forum next Sunday on account of it being Labor Day weekend. So we hope to see you in 2 weeks, which will be the first of two-part Sunday on restorative justice. So see you in 2 weeks here in the Guild Room. Thank you.